a commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens, to defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. I am David. I am the Malcontent, and today is Monday, March 8th, 2021. And let me pull in my co-host, the amazing Jennifer Smith. Jennifer, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing well, David. How are you?
I am doing very, very well. We've got a fair amount of stuff to cover, a lot of ground to cover tonight. And but I wanted to kind of open up with, over the weekend, we had the Senate reach a resolution on the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package that's back to the House. And that is expected to be on Biden's desk by the end of the week.
Yeah, that's, exciting news because there's a lot of great stuff in there. They had to make some compromises. There's a couple alarming things that we talked about over the weekend that aren't in there, like an eviction moratorium extension. So we'll have to see what happens there.
We're definitely going to have to see what happens there. Very interesting. One thing that jumped out at me, Ted Cruz was on the floor being Ted Cruz. One of the things that he made this long statement about how every illegal alien in the United States of America was going to get a COVID relief check in this package. And he was soundly roasted on the Senate floor for that statement because the relief package payments are set up the exact same way they were set up by the Trump administration. And no one without a Social Security number is getting a check.
Yeah, well, that's a kind of a funny statement from a man who just got roasted for taking his family to Cancun while Texas, suffered without power during a snowstorm. But okay.
It's like he's trying to see how much could I actually get away with and still probably get reelected because Texas. Sorry, Texas. I'm just calling it as I see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Jennifer, are we ready to start the land acknowledgement?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Malcontent News comes to you from Seattle, Washington, the occupied homelands of Coast Salish peoples. We are grateful to live and work as guests on these lands, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. This land acknowledgement is but one small gesture in the ongoing processes of working toward repairing and sustaining relations with Coast Salish lands, waters, peoples, and their other than human kin.
Jennifer, I love how you've got the timing on that, like right to the video. It's fantastic. And I really, I say it every time you do this. I am so glad you introduced this to the show. It really adds, and it's a critical thing, and it aligns with my personal belief. So once again, thank you for bringing that. All right, Malcontents, before we dive into story 0, we have a story 0. Couple of things. This is the time to spam those hearts. Go ahead and spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins know that you love the hard work that they do, along with our editors and researchers and our social media team and our associate editors and our contributing writers. Holy smokes, we have this big team. It's really amazing. The other thing you can do if you're just like, you can do a like. You can do that too. Plus, I don't get to hit the like button very often. The other thing is, let's see if I can get the right button this time. Oh my goodness, I'm getting better at this. You can go ahead and follow us on Twitter. That's a channel that you can absolutely follow us on. And another one is YouTube. If you can go over to YouTube and subscribe over there, or just make a note in your head, like, go subscribe over to YouTube. Even if you don't watch us on YouTube, go over there and subscribe, because we're close. If we get a few more subscribers over there, we get to do some cool stuff. And with that, Jennifer, we've got a story 0, a breaking news story out of San Francisco. There was an incident that happened on Sunday. The video just hit at about 7 o'clock tonight. Jennifer, I know you haven't seen it, so you're going to see it for the first time, and I'm going to go ahead and roll this clip, and we could spend a couple of minutes unpacking it.
Fuck the man. Fuck the nigga, and I got corona. Yeah, what's up? Fuck you too. What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
My property.
You about to get your ass beat. Now you about to get beat the fuck up. Yeah, now you about to get beat the fuck up. Now you about to get beat the fuck up. What's up?
You don't touch my property. You don't buy it. You don't buy it. I bought it. I work hard for it.
You're not in the middle of nowhere.
So
what's up? Hell no.
So
Bitch ass
did it like this?
Kick us out in the middle of the fucking thing. Are you stupid? I really have somebody do something.
Did I told you to get out in the gas station? You didn't.
So that's only some of the video, Jennifer, that happened in San Francisco yesterday. Woke San Francisco.
Yeah, like woke Seattle.
Yeah, like woke Seattle, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, I'm going to start. I know we talked real briefly on this, and I've said this before, and I know I'm probably going to get roasted in the comments for my view on this. I have said that everybody is racist. I have said that over and over and over again, and I don't see this like as a case of, I'm calling reverse racism or something here. Here you have somebody who is of Central Asian descent. They are Indian, Pakistani, Afghani. We don't exactly know, but they're in that geography. There are 3 black women in the back seat, and at the bare minimum, this is classism. This is horrific classism at the bare minimum. Clearly, they're anti-maskers. They grab his property. They rip his mask off of his face in the video, and he's trying to get him out of the car because they're refusing to wear masks.
Yeah, no, and that's totally understandable. It's a safety issue. Uber has really strong policies about wearing masks in their vehicles, and you can be reported and actually, I think, banned now for refusing to wear a mask in a vehicle. I think I differ a little bit from you in wanting to call it racism. It's definitely discrimination, just because racism has such distinct connotations and usually implies a systemic power imbalance, but it's definitely discrimination. It's definitely classism. And it's definitely an example of, something where consequences need to be had for a failure to abide by the rules. And they should probably ultimately be banned from Uber permanently for their behavior, for the way they treated the driver, for refusing to wear a mask, for a number of things.
Well, and on the subject of consequences, the driver has filed a claim against the passengers in the vehicle, the person that set up the Uber. And as of that video coming out at 7 p.m. tonight, Uber is yet to even respond to the driver, and it's been over 24 hours. But now that this is blowing up on social media, we're one of the first kids in the block to be playing this, because when I pulled this video down, I think it only been played about 159 times when it hit. So this is real fresh stuff. Jennifer, I think Uber is going to have a lot to say about this in the next 12 to 24 hours.
Yeah, and just on a quick historic note, we need not forget how the ways in which San Francisco and the West Coast more broadly has treated Asian people. If you look back to the Chinese Exclusion Act and the ways in which Japanese people were treated on the West Coast during World War II, this is not something that's new. This has, historic resonance because of those particular things. And, like the Chinese Exclusion Act actually originated from politicians on the West Coast.
Yes, it did. And the very dark history all along up and down the West Coast with horrific history in our backyard in Tacoma, Washington. But we could talk about that some other time.
Yes.
And with that, Jennifer, I think we're actually going to go ahead and move to story number 1.
Okay.
Story number 1 takes us right here to Seattle, Washington. It is the 51st anniversary of the occupation of Fort Lawton to the day, Jennifer. And I know, Jennifer, you're bringing this story to us. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I know you have some video, and I just want to preface this a little bit. Fort Lawton is within what we now know as Discovery Park. This occupation took place, it began on March 8th. And lasted about 3 weeks and ultimately culminated with the United Indians of all Tribes Foundation acquiring a 20-acre lease for 99 years, which is now where Daybreak Star Cultural Center sits. So on that, maybe we should go ahead and roll that clip.
Not long ago, people believed the Indians were a vanishing race. But the Indians are not dying out. More and more young Indians are trying to learn about their culture and traditions. That doesn't mean just dancing and handicraft. It means returning to a way of life in harmony with the land and each other.
Why don't you just say in your own words what you have in mind here?
Senator, we'd like to be able to read it to you.
How long is it going to take?
It won't take too long, Senator. Dear Senator Jackson, Kanachitapi Indian Council is submitting a proposal to obtain the United States Army land and buildings at Fort Lawton for use as a multi-service center and a cultural, vocational, and higher education center for all American Indian and Alaska Natives.
A war dance was held. The plan to occupy the surplus land at Fort Lawton was announced. The next morning, Indians stormed the fort from every direction. Some climbed fences, some came up the cliffs from the beach, some rushed through the gates. The army closed in on scattered groups of Indians. Women were knocked to the ground. Men were clubbed. Cameras were smashed. Movie film and tapes were destroyed. 64 people, the youngest of them 3 years old, were held all day in 2 cells. Next week, the Indians came again, this time in one group, silently climbing the cliffs in the dark of night, waiting just under the edge of the bluff until the first light of morning.
And we don't want to interfere with the military operation. Let's have a flag of truce. Who's got a handkerchief?
I did. Put it on the walkie-talkie. No, we must have it. Yeah.
He said that, man, we can't stay here.
We were informed that they had 35,000 troops at his disposal. And he will call them if necessary.
A few, including the movie cameraman, fled back down the cliff, pursued by MPs. The others waited, allowing themselves to be taken away without resisting. Federal trespassing charges were filed against them. The Indians were defeated once again by the U.S. Army. Young Sugar Frank spent his first day in jail, and his family knew that there would be more times, many more times for all of them, and that they would go on fighting because they saw more and more Indian people coming together. In victory and defeat, they were being united.
Thank you for that, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I mean, this is Fort Lawton is interesting because it's situated within this kind of longer history of Indian activism within the Pacific Northwest that led to really incredible things like the Bolt decision, and other gains for Native peoples in the 1970s. But what happened is, this occupation was led by Bernie Whitebear, who was a local Native activist in the area prior to the occupation. And so the night before the occupation, Whitebear organized actually a powwow because he wanted to really kind of bring the community together and not make some of the same mistakes that were happening at the occupation of Alcatraz that had been ongoing since 1969, and of course culminated after 18 months in 1971. But when they actually initially scaled the fences, they didn't realize that there were reserve military police still there. And so reserve military police actually called in reinforcements from Fort Lewis and the SPD. And so, accounts basically recall that these reinforcements through tear gas, they removed occupants through blackberry bushes into awaiting vehicles. The occupation continued. And as Lonnie Reyes, who is actually Bernie Whitebear's brother, recalls, more than 500 Indian and non-Indian allies, as well as increasing media coverage, created this, what they called Resurrection City, which allowed the occupation to continue. And Resurrection City was supplied with food and clothing by local community members. The Army at one point actually became so frustrated with the occupation, it called in troops from Fort Lewis to install nearly 1 mile of concertina wire around the perimeter. But these protesters remained undeterred, tried to scale the fence on the south end again on March 12th, bringing teepees and drums with them. They were then again accosted by the military police, and then ended up going back out and just, protesting and gathering outside of the gates again. There was a negotiation phase where Bernie Whitebear was advised to create this organization, which is where the United Nations of All Tribes Foundation came from. So they basically convinced BIA Commissioner Louis Bruce to put a hold on Fort Lawton land as surplus federal lands, which allowed them to put in an early application for the lands before the city of Seattle, which really pissed off then Mayor Wes Ullman. But Senator Henry Jackson was up for re-election. He had a bad image with Native peoples. He thought that getting in good with them via this route and kind of putting pressure on the BIA to give them some of this land in Seattle was a good thing. And so he kind of, not altruistically, but for his own gain, helped out with that. And so as a result of these negotiations, as I said earlier, they were awarded a 99-year lease for 20 acres of land within Fort Lawton, which is now Discovery Park. And so in 1973, the city of Seattle dedicated $500,000 for the construction of a cultural center, and the Economic Development Administration awarded the foundation $250,000. Both ended up putting in more funding because the actual final cost of the cultural center was around $1.2 million, and then it was opened in 1977. So the United Nations of All Tribes Foundation continues on even after Whitebear's death from colon cancer in 2000, and it provides a number of services to Native peoples in the Seattle area and beyond, including family services, a preschool at Daybreak Star, a Native veterans program, an elders program, a youth home, employment support, and more. Daybreak Star also holds an annual powwow and gathering over the summer, usually during Seafair, which draws Native peoples from all over the state and beyond. And although it's unclear if that's going to actually happen again this year because of COVID.
Yeah, an interesting thing that I've read in researching the video for you, Jennifer, is some of that footage we saw. The producers actually buried their cameras in the film in the sand along the bluff, and then broke back into Fort Lawton in the middle of the night to retrieve it. They were about 200 feet away from the fence line on their way coming out when they were spotted by MPs, and they described the 200-foot sprint and climb over the fence as being akin to a prison jailbreak. To go ahead and retain some of the video and footage that we were able to play today.
Yeah, no, and so when they went back in on the 12th, the MPs were ready for them. They were in full riot gear, ready for them, and marched on them, saw them, because they had actually timed the patrols to know when to cross the fence, because their intent was to, of course, occupy from the inside, to set up camp inside. Of course, that didn't happen. The MPs were ready for them. And so instead of, fighting with them this time, because they knew this was not going to be a good thing after how the first incident went down, they just employed tactics of nonviolent resistance and just went limp when they were grabbed, and then continued the occupation from outside.
Jennifer, thank you so much for bringing that story to us tonight. I know that I learned a lot, and I really appreciate hearing about our local history, something to be very candid, I wasn't aware of until 24 hours ago.
Awesome.
All right. So with that, I think we'll do a little pause for the cause, and then we'll move on to our next story.
Okay.
Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you. Yes, and when you become a patron, you do help us continue to bring great work and great story like Jennifer just did about the Fort Lawton occupation. You help us with safety gear, paying for writers, and paying for some of the content, including some of the content that we're going to show you later on tonight. And we know that we really appreciate and mad love to our patrons. Go ahead and spam those hearts to our patrons and the people also that do Venmo. I haven't said this in a while. You just even toss $5 in the Venmo jar. $5 donations buys us a news story. So it actually goes a lot further than what you think. So with that, I think we'll go to the next segment. All right, I'm seeing in the comments that it appears that there's maybe some problems with the relay chat with Restream tonight. Sorry, there's nothing we can do about that. Mods, I know we have mods at least on 3 channels, so mods, when we ask you to kind of post some stuff from Malcontentment Minutes, can we just assume that it's not getting cross-posted across those channels? All right, it's Malcontented Minutes. This is where you get to choose the news, sort of at the end of this. Jennifer and I have 20 minutes. We have 10 stories. We're going to go ahead and tell those stories. We have a story that kind of falls in the bucket of other, one that's BIPOC, one that's LGBTQIA, one that is funny, and one that is feel good. We have 2 stories each. Admins, mods, if you can go ahead in the individual chats and drop the link to the poll. What, there's a poll? I get to choose the news? Yes, there is a poll. What you get to do is you get to pick the story that you want Jennifer and I to unpack a little bit more at the end of the show. Now, you could go look at the poll right now to learn what the 10 topics are, but I wouldn't vote right now until you get to hear the 10 stories. And we're going to change it up a little bit tonight. Jennifer's going to go first tonight. Jennifer, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. And the clock is running.
So I know we have a short clip, but I'm going to preface this a little bit. Recently, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry did a bombshell interview with Oprah Winfrey. And so basically what they detailed was the ways in which Meghan was treated because she is half Black, conversations that were had in the upper echelons of what they call the firm about concerns they had about the child's skin color, Harry and Meghan's child's skin color after birth, the ways in which she felt suicidal at some points because of how she was treated, strained relationships with family, and also, how they were treated by the British media and some of the reasons that they stepped back from their duties. So I think you have a clip for that, David, and why don't you go ahead and
Speaking to
roll that.
Oprah, the Duchess of Sussex described a world that left her isolated and feeling trapped. I remember so often people within the firm would say, well, you can't do this because it'll look like that. You can't, so even, can I go and have lunch with my friends? No, you're oversaturated, you're everywhere. And I said, I've left the house twice in 4 months. I'm everywhere, but I am nowhere.
All right, I get about 35 seconds to unpack this. I didn't watch the interview. This isn't my lane. I will say, though, social media was blowing up with this last night. I saw a TikTok video, a really short clip, where somebody went into their kitchen cabinet where they had a Meghan oh my God, Jennifer, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Harry.
A Meghan and Harry wedding plate, and they brought it and they dropped it into the trash can. So that was their opinion of that. If there's anybody that's come out losers in that story, I would say it's the royal family. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to story number 2. Story number 2 takes us to Chattaroy, Washington, where I'll just play the news clip and unpack it a little bit.
Mix-up between a deputy and a homeowner led to a shooting in north of Chattaroy, putting that homeowner in the hospital.
Yeah, that's right, Clyde. The man who was shot, he was the one who actually asked for help from the Spokane County Sheriff's Office for extra patrols after he reported that there was a burglary on his property yesterday morning. Now, there was some confusion, though, because the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, they said that they didn't know that he would be returning to his property late last night. So right now, details are very limited, but we do know that Spokane County Sheriff's Ozzie Knezovich said that the man who owns the property doesn't live there. And while a deputy was doing the requested prowl check, the deputy came in contact with the property owner, and at some point, shots were fired and the property owner was hit.
I'm just gobsmacked by this, but we're seeing more and more of this, of shoot some more, and ask questions later. Jennifer, you get about 55 seconds to unpack this.
Yeah, when I watched this video prior to the show, I was like, what is even going on here? He calls out somebody because he thinks that there's a prowler and then gets shot by the police. Is that, what happened? That's just absolutely insane to me, that the same people that you're counting on to protect and serve and come and check out your home in case there's somebody trying to come in and potentially harm you or take your belongings, and you get shot when they come out. I honestly have no words.
The thing that stands out to me is the silence of the Blue Lives Matter folks on this. What, police are human beings and they make mistakes, and I get that. But it's just kind of like, well, this just didn't happen. We don't want to talk about it. And it points to, for me, Jennifer, the fallacy of the good guy with the gun. Here we have a good guy with the gun, but police departments across the country have said when the shit hits the fan, we don't know who a good guy with the gun is.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to move on. Story number 3.
So Deb Haaland, who went through a very contentious confirmation hearing, of course, is the first Native American woman and Native American more broadly to potentially become Secretary of the Interior. And so her nomination was considered favorable, voted 11-9, and is now advancing to the Senate, which is fantastic news. It is very, very likely that she will be confirmed. She actually picked up some support, even though, some Republicans called her radical and said that she was not the best person to oversee issues pertaining to Native American people. But okay, so it looks like she's on her way, and this is a really historic moment, and I am very excited about this.
And I agree. I'm very excited about it also, Jennifer. I get some bonus time. That doesn't happen very often. I'm really excited about this. She is eminently qualified for this role. She is an outstanding individual with a tremendous track record. And honestly, if all they kind of have against her is, oh my God, she actually might do her job. Yeah. There isn't a whole lot that you have in there. 9 Republicans voted against her confirmation. 2 voted for, and one or two voted for, and the rest were Democrats. And she will absolutely, assuredly be passed in the Senate. Yeah. All she needs is 51 votes. My belief is she'll get a lot more than 51.
Yeah, me too. So this is something big. We'll have to follow up on it when she actually gets confirmed, but this is pretty exciting news.
All right, we're going to move on to story number 4. Story number 4, I'm going to go ahead and roll the video clip first.
Confusion and uncertainty just days before jury selection is scheduled to begin in the high-stakes murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. The Minnesota Court of Appeals ruling that trial judge Peter Cahill made a mistake by rejecting prosecutors' attempt to reinstate a third-degree murder charge against Chauvin for his role pinning a knee to the back and neck of George Floyd for some 9 minutes. Chauvin already charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter, but some legal experts believe the state may need that middle charge of murder 3 based on the facts of the case, including autopsy results showing high levels of drugs in Floyd's system.
It's not an open and shut case, murder in the second degree. It just isn't.
Third-degree murder by definition, causing the death of someone during an act eminently dangerous and with a depraved mind, without regard for human life. Long thought to mean a defendant needed to put multiple lives at risk, and not a crime by definition targeting a single individual. But the Court of Appeals recently ruled that's not the case, in upholding the conviction of former cop Muhammad Noor in the shooting death of Justine Ruszczyk-Damon.
I think that clip actually ran a little longer than I wanted, Jennifer. I have a few seconds left. The root of the controversy is Minnesota's third-degree murder charge wasn't tried for an action against a specific person, but a group of people. However, former officer Muhammad Noor was tried and convicted under Minnesota third-degree murder law for the shooting death of Australian Justine Diamond in 2017. Yeah. That case is now with the Minnesota Supreme Court.
Yeah, I really don't know. I don't have a lot to say about this. I mean, we're just continuing to have ongoing instances where people aren't necessarily getting consequences commensurable with their crimes. And yeah, it's a lot. I don't know, David. I got nothing here.
Fair enough. We'll start the timer and you can go to story number 5.
Okay. So, Pierre, South Dakota Senator introduced a series of amendments on February 1st, 2021 that would include protections for individuals identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and Native American Two-Spirit in the state of South Dakota. Senate Bill 166 and 190 were introduced by State Senator Red Dawn Foster, an Oglala Lakota Democrat representing District 27, which includes Bennett, Haken, Jackson, Pennington, and Oglala Lakota counties on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. They're the first bill sponsored by Foster, who is serving her second term as a South Dakota state senator. And what's really unique about this is the inclusion of Native American peoples who identify as Two-Spirit, which is quite similar to what we would consider non-binary. So yeah, this is a big thing, a great step forward. I don't know that it will pass. It is South Dakota, but this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Well, the unfortunate news out of South Dakota tonight is that Kristi Noem, the same governor that brought you the ad campaign, meth, we're on it. Go ahead and look that one up. It's true. You know, we need a button. I need that button, meth, we're on it. That would be a great button to have. There is a anti-transgender bill that is landing on her desk. And tonight, Jennifer, Kristi Noem says she's going to sign it.
Of course she is, because she's a horrible person. I mean, what else?
Well, she has aspirations for 2024, some say. So
gross.
Ick.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on. Story number 6. In 1990, then President Bush 41, signed the Ryan White Comprehensive AIDS Resources Emergency Act. The act freed up millions of dollars in state aid to deal with the AIDS pandemic. But it had, or I should say epidemic, but it had a catch. In order to get the money, states had to pass laws criminalizing giving somebody AIDS. And so 37 states passed laws, making it either a misdemeanor or a felony. That includes the state of Virginia. Virginia made infected sexual battery a felony punishable up to 5 years in prison and a $2,500 fine. The World Health Organization and the CDC has begged for these laws to be pulled back, and it appears Virginia may be the first state to do it. On a bill that is currently sitting on Ralph Norham's desk, it would decriminalize passing AIDS to someone else. There's no indication of what his intentions are, but most believe that he will sign the bill. it's a very interesting contrast in criminalizing giving somebody AIDS in an era where we don't want people wearing masks if you have COVID. Jennifer, you get 45 seconds to unpack it.
I think this is so interesting to me because a lot of people that have HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, don't necessarily know that they have it. And so penalizing somebody for potentially transmitting something that they don't know they have is highly problematic. And it's just been recently that they've allowed, like the Red Cross for gay men to donate blood. So I understand at the time the fear and the concern about the virus and why they potentially thought that was an issue, but there's so much underlying discrimination directed at the LGBTQIA community because of AIDS, particularly gay men, that I think it's long overdue for the decriminalization of something like that, especially in the context where somebody doesn't know they have it and transmit it. So I don't know all of the fine details of the law, but I'm curious to see what happens and if he's going to go ahead and sign it.
All right, we'll go ahead and set the timer, Jennifer, and story 7.
Oh, yes. This is interesting. This is like something out of Pawn Stars or Antique Roadshow. An unidentified man from Connecticut went to a yard sale and bought a $35, what looked like, decorative Chinese bowl that ended up being from the 15th century and worth $350,000. I know we have a clip and it's a little bit long, so go ahead and run it.
Well, wait till you hear about this. A yard sale discovery is now a major treasure, valued at up to $500,000.
As soon as we saw images of this, we immediately knew it was.
Angela McAteer, Senior Vice President and Head of Department for Chinese Ceramics and Work of Arts at Sotheby's in New York, tells us this bowl was purchased at a Connecticut tag sale for just $35. It's estimated to be worth between $300,000 and $500,000.
So the bowl itself dates to the early 15th century, product made during the reign of the Yongle Emperor, who certainly in terms of Chinese history is one of the all-time great emperors.
Who edits these damn videos? Fire their ass.
No, I can't. I don't have the authority.
That was not CBS Harpo Productions. We did have the beginning part of it correct. This is just like one of these stories So, Jennifer, I do have a yard sale story. I have a first pressing original copy released before it went to the general public, so a promotional release of Roy Orbison's Oh Pretty Woman 45. Oh. I cannot remember what is on the B side. I picked it up at a yard sale literally decades ago for 50 cents. And it's worth stupid money today.
Wow, that's really cool. Really, really cool.
And of course, as soon as I realized it was worth something, it's never been played since. It's just in a very safe spot where it won't get too hot and melt. And there's actually more to that story if people want to unpack that story. But with that, we're going to keep moving, and I'm going to go to story number 8 and pray to God there isn't another video error in this one. All right, we're going to go ahead and start the timer for story number 8. A woman cuts line in Bed Bath and Body Works. I knew I was going to do Bed Bath & Beyond. I have a mental block of this. At Bath & Body Works, and just watch the video. And yes, that was for cutting the line. That's why all that went down. I've never seen a group of women more in desperate need of stress relief candles in my entire life. Jennifer, you got 45 seconds.
Yeah, that's super dramatic. I actually was at Nordstrom Rack the other day, and there were some women fighting in line there. I can't remember what I was buying, but there was something going on. It was actually the cashier and a customer, and then the manager had to come over, and the customer ended up being removed. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's something in the water this week. Maybe it has something to do with International Women's Day, and people are just on edge. I don't know what's going on. That is a super dramatic reaction to line cutting.
Just to answer a couple of comments, had nothing to do with race, had nothing to do with masks. A group of women cut the line in front of the other group of women, and there you go. That was the reaction to it. America, you gotta love the greatness. All right, Jennifer, you ready to bring us story number 9?
Yes. So this is exciting news out of the NFL. Maya Shaka is hired as NFL's first Black woman on-field official. Shaka has officiated at the college level, including stints in the Pac-12 Conference and the Conference USA. She also has experience from working in the XFL during the 2020 season, according to the Bleacher Report. That league's season, of course, was cut short because of the coronavirus. Shotgun Thomas made history in 2014. That's Sarah Thomas, when they both became the first female officials to work an FBS bowl game between Washington and BYU. In 2014, Shaka was chosen for the NFL's officiating development program, which identifies top collegiate officiating talent to expose them to some of the same experiences as NFL officials. So basically, she said on Today that she learned of her promotion on Monday from Wayne Mackey, NFL's Vice President of Officiating Evaluation and Development. And she has a bachelor's degree from Norfolk State University, where she majored in health, physical education, and exercise science. She also participated in the Teacher Certificate Program and was a member of the Health, Physical Education, and Exercise Science Majors Club. And she's, very excited to, for this opportunity. And I think this is extremely exciting news.
So I have mixed feelings on this. I'm really happy for her. I'm really excited for this. I am really excited the NFL has another woman ref. I'm excited that it is a Black woman, but I just go right back to Colin Kaepernick and what they did to destroy his career over taking a knee for the national anthem. And then this created this whole thing. Well, why can't they just peacefully protest? Well, I'm sorry, but Colin tried to peacefully protest and you had a shit fit over that and destroyed his career. So I'm really torn on this. So I'm like golf clap, and the golf clap is not directed at her. It is just directed at the NFL.
Absolutely.
Cap still has mileage on his odometer, and he should get a legitimate chance to play in the NFL again. That's my view. And until then,
I agree. But I am excited for her. So
Totally. Yeah. We're absolutely on the same page for that. That's why I say my feelings are mixed. For her, I'm super excited. And for all the right reasons. But there's part of me that Jennifer, it's just like, this is the NFL trying to polish their image, and it's just gross.
Yeah.
All right. This brings us to story number 10. Story number 10. Maybe the cat watched too much Jersey Shore and just got sick of it. Or maybe he was tired of the New York Giants and wanted to go to a city with a winning football team. But either way, one lucky cat has been reunited with their cat brothers and has a 4-year story to tell, and how he or she ended up in the Steel City.
A cat who went missing in New Jersey in 2016 somehow ended up in Pittsburgh. Nova was a young cat when she went missing just before Christmas in 2016. More than 4 years later, she turned up in Pittsburgh. The shelter animal friends helped reunite Nova with her owner and her kitty sibling. I'm sure that cat has more stories to tell than most humans. Katie Johnston for KDKA News.
Jennifer, you got a minute and 20 if that's what you want.
No, I don't, how am I supposed to even unpack that? The cat, was missing from 4 years and went between states. I mean, I'm happy that it's found its way back home. I wish my kid's parakeet that flew out the window 4 months ago would have that kind of journey and get its ass back home, but I don't foresee that happening.
How does a cat from New Jersey meow? They just yo, fucking meow.
What's the F-bomb?
Yeah.
This is racist.
Perhaps. Perhaps.
I got your cat. I got your cat right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Jersey. You want to go? We'll go right now. All right, enough of that. Jennifer, we were like 20 minutes.
Wow, we did it on time?
We totally did it on time. We're like at 20 minutes, 30 seconds.
Wow.
All right, and with that, we're going to do a little brief pause for the cause. We're going to go to our next segment. Before we get started on this clip in this segment, this is just another good time to say, spam those hearts. Oh, totally forgot something here too. Mods and admins, go ahead and drop the link to the poll. Now is the time for you to vote. I was so excited that we did this in 20 minutes that I was totally all about vote for your favorite story. Go ahead and drop that link to the polls. You get to vote now for your favorite story. That's the story that Jennifer and I are going to unpack a little bit at the end. If it's a video clip, we'll just play the video. Like if you're like, I just want to see the Bed Bath. I did it again. The Bath and Body Works fight again. You can pick that and we'll just play the video again. And so with that, also another thing, we're going to start. It's time to spam those hearts again. Spam those hearts. Mess with the Facebook algorithm and the Twitter and Periscope algorithm. If you haven't done a share or a watch party, please go ahead and do a share and watch party at this time. Jennifer, there was a march over the weekend for Black Trans Lives, but Black Trans Lives. And our field producer, Renee Rakety, was out there, and we have some video and highlights of that march.
Great.
Blowing in the wind, barely breathing.
You don't have to treat us different. And she was a person of color too.
You know, Jennifer, I've talked about this on the show. A Black trans individual has a lifespan in the United States that is under 40 years. So a Native American living in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, which has 35% homelessness, 50% high school dropout rate, 50% alcoholism, and the poorest county in the United States of America, actually has a longer lifespan.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely horrifying. And I just don't understand why people are so up in arms over transgender people. What does it matter? What is it challenging? Why is it so challenging for some people to accept? These ingrained stereotypes that we have in the context of gender roles in our society are so problematic. When we see that day in and day out in the ways in which transgender people are treated.
Yeah, I saw a video. I'm thoroughly addicted to TikTok. Go ahead and sign up for TikTok so you can follow our TikTok. And I've just ruined your life with that advice. But I'm thoroughly addicted to TikTok right now. And I saw a video on there. I've liked a couple of videos for people that done on trans. There's one trans woman in there in particular, a younger woman. I love her content about her experiences in trans and her viewpoints. And so in liking some of that content, I'm seeing a lot more of this content. And I saw one, Jennifer, that was really fascinating to me. It was a trans woman that goes, was answering the question, what does it make me if I'm cis, if I'm straight and I'm attracted to somebody who's trans? They're like, it just makes you cis. They were like, there's nothing wrong with you. And I don't know. Once again, I'm up here, the old Jewish white guy that's balding with gray hair in the burbs, trying to explain this to the world. I don't get what the problem is. I don't.
Yeah, I don't get it either, but it stems from these ingrained gender roles that we've had for so long, and people's resistance to stray from those in any capacity. I mean, look at, the things we went through the 50s and 60s and 70s and the uprising. I can't think of her name now. Phyllis, I can't think of her name now, who was so, staunch, domestic, women need to be domestic laborers and, hold on, push back against the women's movement and feminism and, really just, cling to these domestic housewives, roles. And we're still seeing so much of that now. And during, Women's Month and on International Women's Day, I think it's high time that we really worked to push back against, what are these very patriarchal gender norms. They stem from the patriarchy, and men have over the course of history defined what women's roles are, and women have for the most part went along with this because a variety of reasons, but oppression and a variety of other things. You have some women who are still from particular generations who are still very much holding on to these ideals. But I think it's time we, really push back against these patriarchal constructions of what constitutes gender norms in our society and stop worrying about who is identifying as what, because really in, the end, it's none of your fucking business.
At the end of the day, it is anybody's business. And one of the things that I've really appreciated, we had Nikhila Rice on the show here a couple of months ago, and the work that she has done in collaboration with the Black Action Coalition and Eastside Embrace, and doing things like Black Joy festivals, and the highlight that they put on Black trans and trans artists in general. We have a thriving art scene among the trans population here in Seattle. And right now, because of COVID, they are as a group struggling because they are cut off from their work.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was going to talk to you because I was sent a link by one of my fellow instructors at Seattle South about actually like a trans artist exhibition that's coming up via Zoom within the next couple of weeks. And I asked for permission to share that with all of you. And so I'm just waiting for her to email me back. But once I get that confirmation, I'll send you the information, David, and you can share that with people.
Well, we thank Renee for shooting that video. I know we have some lives that are planned. There's a lot of events that are getting ready to come up. We have some lives that we have planned for that. Due to operational security, I'm not going to talk about which lives we are and we aren't doing. But we are going to be doing some live broadcasts coming up here over the week. And we know we get a lot of people that watch that. And of course, we'll have some Behind the Poll if there's something worthy for Behind the Poll. Jennifer, I think we're going to go to our next segment. All right, and our next segment is COVID Fast 5. We've got 5 stories that are up to date on COVID information, and we're just going to go ahead and go. Jennifer, I think I'm going to go ahead and start first, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll be the bearer of bad news tonight, and then you get the good news story afterwards. First, we're going to start you off with some bad news, malcontents. Researchers investigating the mutation of COVID from the UK, Brazil, South Africa, and California are reaching a sobering conclusion on the South African variant. There was already indications that the South African strain was resistant to the current batch of vaccinations, to the point that the country of South Africa stopped using the Pfizer vaccine. New studies are now showing it's very resistant to the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, supporting what South African researchers indicated at the start of this year. There is some good news in this, though. Early tests of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine shows that it's less effective on what are the dominant strains right now, but it is particularly more effective on the South African variant.
Oh, that's interesting because I was actually having this conversation with somebody earlier today, wondering if that would be the case, because they were talking about how a colleague of theirs had gotten very not feeling well after the second vaccination dose, which I know is quite common. And they're like, why don't you just get the one vaccine? And we were discussing efficacy and whatever. So that's good news. I'm going to have to relay that to them.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Maybe the fears of a new wave of COVID being caused by spring breakers won't happen. Some colleges have taken bigger steps to prevent travel, including the UW, not offering spring break this year and continuing classes. Many more college students this year are indicating they are begrudgingly going to stay closer to home this year. This isn't to say there won't be crowds in the usual hotspots, but it appears sanity may prevail. I know that we haven't gone as far at the UW as saying, hey, no spring break, but they have put out several emails and other things stating, hey, we would really strongly advise you not to travel and go home during spring break.
And apparently, looking at the data, the travel data, Jennifer, and like airline ticket sales and hotel bookings, the conclusion is a lot of students are taking that advice to heart this year.
Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah, it is. It's good news. Let's go on to story number 3. On Saturday, the United States set a vaccination record, immunizing 2.9 million Americans for COVID-19. Washington State is now immunizing 45,000 people daily and is ready to accelerate further as soon as they can get their hands on more vaccination. The supply and distribution issues that we saw last month, caused by the dramatic winter weather across most of the United States, has stabilized. As of this writing, so when this was written about 4 p.m, 91 million doses have been administered. 31 million Americans, almost 10% of the population, have now had both doses. At 2.9 doses per day, Jennifer, the entire country theoretically will be immunized in the next 120 days. We already know that 30+% of the population is saying, over my dead body, will I get a vaccination? And COVID's got a message for them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely positive news, especially after your first being the bearer of bad news point on the COVID Fast 5. All right. Moving on. With over 525,000 COVID deaths and more COVID deniers coming forward, I was wrong, the number of Americans wearing masks is actually going up, which is fantastic news, right? Over 89% of Americans state they wear a mask at least some of the time, the highest it has ever been. According to the American Medical Association, the AMA attributes the change in attitude coming from more people being directly or even indirectly impacted by the severe illness or the loss of a loved one. The news isn't perfect, although 89% of Americans are now wearing a mask some of the time. The number that is masked up all the time outside of the home continues to hover around 50%.
Yeah, the 50% number isn't great, but up to 89% of Americans going, I wear a mask at least sometimes, is a huge improvement from when we're at 4 to 5 months ago. And as you said, Jennifer, what the AMA, their study indicated was so many people now are like, well, I know grandma that died, or I know this aunt that died, or I've got this friend and they're a long hauler now and their lungs are destroyed and they've got, blood clots in their legs. And that is the motivator. Last year, one of the things that we were saying here on the show is that people won't start taking it seriously, unfortunately, until the bodies start piling up. We never reached the point of literal bodies in the street, but unfortunately, the number sickened and the number died has just reached a point that a lot of lives have been impacted. And so people are going, well, I need to wear it. The thing I wonder, Jennifer, on the 50% wearing masks all the time, like, for instance, I'll freely admit, if I go out for a walk, I'm not wearing a mask on a walk. I'll carry a mask with me, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, there's people around. The mask is going. Or if I walk up to the mailbox, I'm not wearing a mask. Now, April of last year, I wore a mask 100% of the time. I just was like, it is just lingering death all around me. That was my view. And we know a lot more. So I'm really curious on that 50%. How many people in there fall into that category of, well, if I'm out for a walk in the woods, wearing a mask versus.
Yeah, I definitely fall in that category.
Yeah. Right. So is it 100% you're wearing a mask whenever you're sipping? And we don't know. And the data wasn't available fully in that story. All right, moving on. Story number 5. In a sign that the light at the end of the tunnel is near, the CDC has advised that people who are immunized, both doses, can now have small private gatherings in their homes without masks and without maintaining social distancing. So 31 million Americans right now are able to take a big leap forward towards normalcy. The CDC still recommends wearing a mask in public even if you are immunized. The immunization works not just in preventing the disease, but lessening the symptoms for many people if you get sick. So the ironic thing is you could still get infected with COVID, but your odds of being a spreader and asymptomatic carrier are much higher, which is why they want people to still wear a mask for now until we have a majority of the population immunized.
Oh man, single people are going to be rushing to get their vaccinations. You know, you get vaccinated, you can have people come over to your house. You know, quite an exciting thing after a year of quarantine.
Another thing that I've read, Jennifer, is they're saying that resistance to the vaccine is starting to go, you know, because they've been vaccinating people for over 3 months now and nobody's grown a horn out of their head or turned into a Cronenberg. That's a Rick and Morty reference.
Yes. That's good news. It allays a lot of, you know, those unfounded concerns people had.
All right, Jennifer, that's it for our COVID Fast 5. I think we're going to do one more really brief pause for the cause, and then we're going to go to our final story. Make sure that you vote in our poll. Go to our poll and vote. You've got maybe 5 to 8 minutes left to vote for your favorite story that you want Jennifer and I to unpack a little bit more. And with that, we're going to do one more little pause for the cause.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black Coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee Northwest, located in Shoreline, Washington, on the west side of the highway between 170th and 180th. They have tremendous coffee, great merch. And Jennifer, the night would not be complete without at least one mention of the potato scone. It's like a scone and a baked potato with cheese and onion had a baby, and it's just delicious and soft and amazing, and you need to go get one.
Yeah, just keep rubbing it in, David. Just keep rubbing it in.
And with that, we're going to go to our final story.
Okay.
All right, this moves us on to our final story, which is about one particular animated skunk, Pepe le Pew, a staple of the Warner Brothers cartoons. And Jennifer, I have a clip that I'm going to play. I just want to let everybody here know, first of all, the clip is really short. The clip is embedded in a window. Warner Brothers is super touchy on their copyrights. So Facebook, people watching on Facebook, if we get knocked off the air, I'm reading that Twitch is being twitchy tonight. I've seen that in the comments. So I'm going to point people to YouTube. If we get knocked off the air on Facebook, You can go to YouTube. The channel is Malcontent Matango. The stream will be right up there. And Jennifer, I really have done everything I can to try to wrap this clip in a way that we hopefully don't get knocked off the air. But I do want to play this little bit.
Okay.
Ah, my little darling, it is love at first sight, is it not? No? Do not come with me to the Casbah. We shall make beautiful music together right here.
Yeah, so here we have this video of Pepe Le Pew. Look, I get we're looking through a filter of a different time, but he runs ahead, locks the door, doesn't let her in, let the female cat out. I mean, I get these are animated characters, and then gets rapey. I just don't know how else to put it. It's not funny anymore. When I was a little kid, this was funny. As an adult, and Jennifer, this has creeped me out as an adult for decades now. And the older I get, the ickier Pepe gets.
Yeah, no, he is. Watching that, I was like, man, that's one rapey skunk. The problem is it normalizes that kind of behavior. So when you're a woman or a man, or a boy or girl or whatever growing up, you see this and think that it's kind of acceptable. And so women have had to kind of deal with that behavior and kind of brush it off for a very long time. There's my giant son walking by. So yeah, I think it's high time things like that go away, but Disney also needs to do its due diligence and get rid of Pocahontas too.
Yeah, and I have this next clip that I want to play because what's happened, Jennifer, the controversy that blew up today is they're doing a second Space Jam movie. I don't exactly know why they've waited over 20 years to do a second Space Jam movie, other than this is the quest for more money, because this is just going to be introduced to an audience that I really don't think is going to appreciate many of the Looney Tune characters at this point, because they've been out of mass circulation for years. As a Gen Xer, and I'm sure Gen X and millennials that are probably watching the show probably remember Saturday morning cartoons were still a thing, and the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show was a big thing on ABC, and they would have, a 2 to 3 hour block on Saturdays of Looney Tunes. And I think a lot of us grew up watching these, or at least familiar with them. But I think when you kind of get to middle millennial, it's like it's Space Jam, maybe you caught something on Boomerang, who these characters are, but I don't think you have the affinity. Warner Brothers has pulled a scene with Pepe Le Pew that was going to be, I believe, with Michael Jordan out, where Michael Jordan was explaining to Pepe Le Pew essentially rape culture, and just kind of like, you're doing this all wrong, bro. And then they decided to pull the whole scene. The scene has actually never been fleshed out. So, and this happens in movies a lot, and this happens in production. Jennifer, as you know, and working on this show, there's stuff where we go through the editing process and we're like, oh, we really want to show this. But if we show this part, now all of a sudden this video is 7 minutes long and we know people are going to be leaving. So we have to throw this on the cutting room floor. And this is basically what happened with this scene. But Jennifer, the cancel cultural people are losing their collective shit tonight over this.
I don't even get that, but whatever. It's a cartoon character. Clearly Pepe does not know what consent is. We're in a culture that has historically victimized women and oppressed women through aggressiveness and rape. And it's, we've seen the lack of consequences for that. And so I think pulling that out is a good start. And, Warner Brothers doing something positive. I read about the Space Jam thing earlier, and I think that's particularly interesting. But I also think it's, weird that they hypersexualize animated characters in that way. So yeah.
Well, look how Lola Bunny is hypersexualized, right? And Lola Bunny is a more modern creation in the Looney Tunes canon. I don't think Lola Bunny shows up until like the 1980s.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this weird like hypersexualization of female animated characters.
So
Yeah.
for people who are like, this is cancel culture, I got two things. The first thing I will say is nobody made Warner Brothers do this. They did this as a business decision, independent on their own. Warner Brothers actually got ahead of this when they came out and was like, we made this decision a while ago because he gives us the creeps. He's creepy and rapey. And Jennifer, I have this clip from 2006. 2006! I would love to be able to play.
Okay.
I was with my nephew. We sitting there, we watching Pepe le Pew, and I say to my nephew, I said, now pay attention to this guy because he's funny. I used to watch him when I was little. And we watched Pepe le Pew, but I'm old now. I'm looking like, good God, what kind of fucking rapist is this guy? Like, take it easy, Pepe. My nephew was sitting there cracking up.
Watch the F-bombs. This is written.
Dave Chappelle, 15 years ago. And this was my view 15 years ago too. It's like, this guy's rapey. It's gross.
Yeah, no, it's like he doesn't take no for an answer. And you just, this poor cat who's supposed to be representative of a woman, right? Basically, it's like, just give in and he'll stop, doing it. And so women have to deal with that for like, how long now? What? I don't know. I'm not even going to try and guess a time right now. But that's been a common thing women have dealt with is, potentially someone is putting you in an awkward position and do you fight and potentially get overpowered and hurt yourself or get hurt? Or, do you give in and, they potentially go away afterwards? So that's a very problematic precedent to set with Pepe's behavior. And I'm, glad that he's being removed and called out for being a weird, rapey skunk.
I think one of the things, too, that's lost on a modern audience, including our generation, Jennifer, is Looney Tunes were not created for kids. No. They were created for adults. They were played in movie theaters as cartoon shorts before the main story, during an era when if you wanted to see news like this, you would go to the movie theater to watch Movie Toe News or Newsreel and this was part of that whole entertainment experience of going into a movie theater. Pepe le Pew was not made for a juvenile audience.
No. Yeah, no, and that's something a lot of these people that are, crying because of cancel culture or whatever, probably don't recognize either. But I think the whole cancel culture thing and the people like crying about Mr. Potato Head and Pepe le Pew and all of these other things, you're just, so concerned about change. And it just stems back to this whole idea of potentially people in positions of power, because it's usually white people of a particular generation crying about this stuff, feeling like they're losing their power and it's going to other people and it's somehow going to negatively impact them. Because the thing of it is, especially if we're talking about white supremacy more broadly, it's this fear that people who get into a position of power that don't look like you, that don't, share the same ideals and characteristics as you, are going to potentially treat you the way that you treated them.
And to add to your point, and it's something I said earlier, no one forced Warner Brothers to do this. There weren't people with pitchforks outside of their studios. They made a business decision. Hasbro made a business decision. The Mr. Potato and Mrs. Potato thing hurts my brain because they actually didn't take Mr. or Mrs. off the box. They just put it in the corner. The other thing on that is it just goes against, because people go, it is not about gender norms. Okay, Mr. Potato and Mrs. Potato Head have no genitalia. Yeah, but the Mr. has a mustache and the Mrs. carries a purse. I see. So it's about gender norms. Trump 2024. Right? I mean, that's all they have. It's the same thing with Dr. Seuss. No one made Dr. Seuss pull these books. Dr. Seuss's heirs looked at these 6 books that, other than what I saw in Mulberry Street, I read that. That's the only one of those 6 that I was like, I know that book, and I read that book. The rest of them were like, that's a Dr. Seuss book? Like, I saw some TikTok video. It's like, let's see if we can find something racist in Cracker Barrel, and they go with the camera and they walk right up to it. They book the Cat in the Hat, and it's like they're not pulling Cat in the Hat.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like I said, people are so afraid of change and so afraid that they might lose that position of privilege and power and get treated the way that they've treated other people, that they just rail against it without even understanding or even trying to understand what's at the root of these changes.
Jennifer, what were the people politically aligned that were burning the Harry Potter books? Who wanted to cancel Harry Potter, protested the Harry Potter movies? I seem to remember that.
Yeah.
Didn't they want to cancel the Girl Scouts 7 years ago because the Girl Scouts did this tweet that they twisted as the Girl Scouts were pro-abortion? I mean, why would a woman-oriented organization care about women's reproductive health and women's rights?
Yeah. It's just, again, it's this whole, wanting to keep the status quo and, reaffirm supremacy and entitlement and all of these benefits that white people of a particular leaning have, to ensure that they continue to have them throughout the rest of their life and then can pass them on to their progeny.
Didn't they just try to cancel a whole election?
Yes, they did. Yep.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. Gosh darn it.
Hallelujah! Holy shit!
Oh, there. I mean, the joke's dead because I hit the technical difficulties button. It's right next to that hallelujah button. Mods and admins, we need to know what the winning story is because we're kind of to the finish line. So if you could go ahead and let us know, and I know right now, like 3 mods and admins are going over to the story and they're arguing with Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani over the validity of the rights. Jennifer, I heard that the state of Georgia wants to block anybody that did a mail-in vote to tonight's poll. They feel that it is unfair and it could be an opportunity for cheating. We're just waiting on the mods and admins. I guess while we're waiting for the mods and admins, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a little pause for the cause. Count every vote. Count every vote. All right, the vote has been determined. It is the Chauvin case. That is what I am being told is what they are looking for us to talk a little bit more about on story number 3. We just lost Jennifer. Now I am going to have to hit the technical difficulty. We lost Jennifer. You can actually, there she is. Welcome back. I don't think we can hear you, or I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, my connection froze and I had to reconnect.
It happens. I got to legit hit the technical difficulties button. The Derek Chauvin story out of Minneapolis, that is the one that won in the poll, Jennifer. So I kind of glossed over really quickly in that story on what the situation is and the situation with Officer Noor, or I should say former Officer Noor, and the shooting of Julie Anderson. So she called saying that there was potentially a rape or assault going on in the back alley behind her home. While she was back there to investigate, Minneapolis St. Paul police showed up. I should say Minneapolis police. and she was shot dead in yet another example of shoot some more, and ask questions later. And very interesting, Jennifer, because one of the things that jumps out at me on this case is very attractive, blonde, white woman shot by Muslim, dark-skinned new police officer. And, all of a sudden, we had the heart and will to convict a police officer for misconduct and reckless conduct in the carrying out of their duties. And what we've learned today in the Derek Chauvin case, actually create new case law to make it happen. Amazing how that worked, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And of course, I mean, if you look at like even throughout, after the development of the KKK from the mid-19th century through the progressive era, like one of the fundamental tenets was protecting the, fragile white woman from the dark-skinned lascivious male. And so like the KKK, when it rebranded itself in the early 20th century, that was like, its primary, fundamental point is, we're just trying to protect white women's virtue. And that's why we're so against, the integration of Black people into society and, why we think that, Jim Crow and all this other racist bullshit is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. The appeals court said the judge got it wrong. However, the appeals court did not say, and you have to reinstate the third-degree murder charge. They kicked it back to the judge to make it his problem, essentially. And that feels like playing politics to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, the system is so fundamentally broken right now. Like, I don't even know where you would begin to repair it. I don't know what the solution is. Do you burn it down to the ground and rebuild it? I mean, what has to happen? This, systemic racism and things that function, of course, systemically through things like law, notions of law and order, whatever, are so entirely problematic and so ingrained. I don't know what the solution is for that right now.
Well, exactly. The reason that prosecutors want this third-degree murder charge is the middle charge that's on the table against Officer Chauvin. He's facing second-degree murder. In the video clip that we played earlier, there was a legal expert that said that a second-degree murder charge is not a slam dunk from a prosecutorial standpoint. I agree with some of the comments, too, on the reporting that was kind of ew when they were like, and he had drugs in his system. Drugs, right? I mean, he practically put all that emphasis on he had drugs on his system. And I totally agree with the comments that came up there on the bias on that. The lesser charge that's below that is like an involuntary manslaughter charge. The belief is from legal observers that this third-degree murder charge, which could put Officer Chauvin in prison for up to 25 years, is the one that can stick and has the most teeth.
Okay, I mean, that's from it's probably common sense from a legal perspective, but I think people are just really wanting more justice. I think it's just about justice that's commensurable with the crime committed. Because it's such an ongoing thing that never seems to have any sticking consequences, until you begin to make examples of people that continue to do this, you're just going to continue to have these issues. But again, white supremacy is ingrained, it's systemic, and until you start to dismantle the institutions more broadly and the institution of white supremacy itself, you're not going to see these big systemic changes in justice that people are hoping for.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And there isn't a lot of progress. I put this on our Twitter today. There has not been a lot of progress. We talked about this in our editorial board call, and the poll data is showing this. There is about 20% of people that were saying in the Black Lives Matter camp that on the day that Joe Biden won, went mission accomplished. It's all done. We got rid of Trump. I don't have to worry about it. All problems solved. There's still kids in cages. There's more kids in cages tonight
with the Biden administration than there ever was with the Trump administration. Now, part of that is because the Trump administration practically dismantled our immigration system in the United States. But at this point, that is still at the feet of the Biden administration. $15. The $15 minimum wage, I don't zing them on that because that's more of a congressional and a Senate issue and filibuster. And Democrats should just friggin' get rid of the filibuster and go nuclear at this point. But that's a whole separate friggin' issue. And I don't want to rat hole on the topic on this. You know my view. I say the system isn't broken. It works perfectly. And more people need to be supporting the minority communities because that's why they're called minorities. There's less of them. And if we don't help, there is never going to be change. And the reality is the minority populations are going to outnumber the white populations. And it's not that far away, America. And you do not want to be in a position 50 years from now if the white population has become a lot more of a minority and you get the view of it's payback time. And I'm not saying that to make a fear statement, but you don't want a generation to look back and go, well, they treated us like total crap, because we have examples of that, Jennifer, in the African continent right now.
No, exactly. And I think, people read those statistics, and again, white people of particular demographic and political leanings are horrified of that, that they could potentially be the minority and get treated the way that, they've treated others for, hundreds of years. So rather than adjust their behavior and try and not make amends, but continue, begin to ally with these, oppressed populations and minority communities, they, double down on their super racist behavior and try to guise it as like protecting social norms and tradition.
And we're seeing that with measures on 12 to 14 states against trans youth. And we're seeing that in measures in over 20 states trying to chip away at the Voting Rights Act.
Yep, exactly.
And all of those actions, almost all of those actions will be deemed unconstitutional, in my view, within the next 4 to 10 years.
Yeah.
All right, Jennifer, I think this is the part where we say happy trails to you and the rest of our audience. Thank you once again. It was a great show.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Make sure to spam those hearts. Please give us some love on Venmo or Patreon. We need the love. We always need that love. And with that, Malcontent out.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You're the malcontent. Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontent Antifa. Fuck you.
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.